The palace of Erythia was quiet in the morning light, yet the tension in its halls was palpable. Whispers of the human's influence and the princess's unusual choice had spread quickly among the nobles. Some murmured in fear, others in anger. Kale walked through the corridors, aware of the eyes following him at every turn. He did not fear them. He had faced raiders, led soldiers, and earned respect from many. But the palace was a different battlefield, and here words could be as sharp as swords. Princess Soraya joined him in the courtyard, where the sunlight glimmered on the fountain's waters. Her face was calm, but her mind raced. "The nobles are restless," she said quietly. "They are plotting to remove you, to humiliate me, to restore order. They cannot accept the bond we share." Kyle's eyes narrowed, though his voice remained steady. "Let them plot. We cannot change their minds with force. We must show them that respect is earned, not demanded." The queen summoned them both to the grand chamber. Her golden eyes were sharp, her expression unreadable. The room was filled with nobles, council members, and senior officers. All had come to witness what many expected to be a dramatic confrontation. "Princess Soraya," the queen began, her voice calm but carrying weight, "you have chosen a human as your prize. Now he has proven his skill and loyalty, but the court fears that this choice threatens our traditions and authority. What say you?" Soraya stepped forward, her posture steady. "I say that loyalty, courage, and heart are stronger than tradition alone. Kale has proven himself not just to me but to our people. He is not a prize nor a slave. He is my partner." A ripple of murmurs passed through the room. Nobles exchanged shocked glances. One senior officer stood abruptly. "A human, a slave? To be your partner? This is dishonor. The crown cannot allow this." Kale did not flinch. He spoke calmly, his voice clear. "I do not seek to dishonor anyone. I only wish to serve the city and protect those who dwell here. If loyalty and courage are dishonorable, then I accept the accusation. But I ask only to be judged by my actions, not by my origin." Soraya's hand brushed against his, a silent show of support. The queen observed, her mind weighing centuries of custom against the undeniable truth before her. Kyle had led soldiers, saved lives, and inspired loyalty. He had done more for Erythia than many of her council members could claim. One noble sneered, "And yet he is still a human. He does not belong in this court. Tradition demands obedience, not this." Soraya's voice grew firmer. "And tradition is not stronger than justice, nor stronger than heart. I will not abandon someone who has proven himself worthy. Kale stands with me, and I will stand with him." The chamber fell silent. Even the queen felt the weight of the moment. The choice of a princess could shape the kingdom, for better or worse. Yet she could not ignore the truth. Kyle had earned trust, skill, and courage beyond any expectation. And Soraya had chosen wisely, not for politics, but for heart. Finally, the queen spoke. "Kale, you have served with courage and intelligence. You have defended our city and guided our forces. You are no longer a mere prize. I grant you freedom from any claim of slavery. But your loyalty must remain to the princess and to Erythia." Kyle's eyes met Soraya's, a mixture of gratitude and quiet resolve shining in them. "I am honored," he said. "I will serve Erythia, but my choice is to stand with the princess not as a servant but as a partner." Soraya stepped closer, her eyes bright. "Then we face what comes together." The nobles murmured again, some in disbelief, some in grudging respect. Kyle's freedom had broken chains, not only physical but of expectation and prejudice. That evening, Soraya and Kale walked through the palace gardens, the scent of night flowers filling the air. Stars glittered above, and the city below was quiet, recovering from the recent battles. "You have changed everything," Soraya said softly. "Not just in the palace, but in me. I no longer fear to make my own choices." Kyle shook his head. "You did this yourself. I only stood by. Courage is not given. It is shown." They walked together in silence for a while, the bond between them growing stronger with each step. Words were unnecessary. The trust, respect, and understanding were clear. But even in this calm, challenges remained. Some nobles were not willing to accept Kale's freedom or his partnership with the princess. Secret whispers of rebellion and plots to undermine him spread through hidden corners of the palace. Yet neither Kale nor Soraya showed fear. They had faced raiders together. They could face intrigue together. A few days later, the palace received word of a new threat. A neighboring empire, seeing Erythia's recent victories, sought to challenge the city's strength. Their diplomats demanded tribute, failing which they promised military action. The nobles grew anxious, but Sariah and Kale saw opportunity. "We will not bow to threats," Sariah declared, her voice ringing through the grand hall. "We will meet diplomacy with intelligence and strength, and if battle comes, we will be ready together." Kale prepared plans for both defense and negotiation. He advised Sariah on tactics, on how to read the diplomats' motives and how to present Erythia as strong and united. The nobles were forced to acknowledge his skill once more, though some did so reluctantly. In private moments, Sariah spoke to Kale of her fears and hopes. "I have never felt this way before," she admitted. "You are not just my partner in battle. I feel something more." Kale's eyes softened. "And I feel it too. But our duty comes first. The kingdom must come before us, even as we stand together." She nodded, understanding the balance required. Together they were strong, yet they knew that personal feelings must not interfere with the safety and order of Erythia. In the following days, the princess and the human worked tirelessly. Soldiers trained under Kale's guidance, nobles debated with Sariah's leadership, and the palace prepared for both diplomacy and conflict. The bond between Kale and Sariah became a symbol, not of scandal but of hope. The queen, once doubtful, now observed them with quiet pride. Her daughter had chosen wisely, embracing heart and courage over fear and convention, and Kale, the human, had proven that strength came not from birthright, but from action, spirit, and intelligence. One night, as the palace slept, Kale and Sariah stood atop the main tower, looking over the city they had both defended and guided. "The people will follow us," Sariah said softly, "because we have shown them courage and because we trust each other." Kale nodded. "And because we act together, we are stronger than any challenge. Nothing can break a bond forged in trust and shared purpose." The twin moons shone above, casting silver light across their faces. The city was quiet yet alive with possibility. The chains of expectation had been broken, and with them the path forward was clear. Kale was no longer a slave, and Sariah's choice, once shocking to all, had become a beacon of change. As they stood side by side, they understood that the future would demand more courage, more wisdom, and more unity, yet neither feared what was to come. Together they were ready. Together they were unstoppable. And in the quiet of the night, the first true promise of their shared destiny began to shine, a promise that would test the palace, the kingdom, and even their own hearts. The morning sun rose over Erythia, painting the palace towers in gold. The city was calm, yet beneath the calm lay anticipation. Word had spread that the neighboring empire would send diplomats and perhaps an army to challenge Erythia's strength. The nobles whispered anxiously, but Kale and Princess Sariah stood firm. They had faced raiders, navigated court intrigue, and forged trust among soldiers and citizens alike. Now the time had come to prove their unity once more. Kale studied maps in the strategy room, his dark eyes sharp. "They will test our patience first," he said. "If we show weakness, they will strike. If we show strength and intelligence, they may reconsider before battle." Sariah leaned over the maps beside him, green eyes shining with determination. "Then we will not only defend our city, we will show them the spirit of Erythia, and we will show them that unity between peoples is stronger than fear or prejudice." The queen entered, her golden eyes observing both the human and her daughter. "You have both grown in courage and wisdom," she said. "The kingdom looks to you now, not only for defense but for example. Let your actions reflect the strength of heart and mind." Kale nodded respectfully. "We will, Your Majesty. But this is as much Sariah's guidance as mine. Together, we are stronger." That afternoon, the diplomats from the neighboring empire arrived. They were tall, imposing figures dressed in flowing robes of deep indigo and silver. Their voices carried authority, but there was curiosity in their gaze as they observed the princess standing beside a human. Sariah addressed them calmly, her voice clear and steady. "Welcome to Erythia. We know of your concerns. We value peace, but we do not bow to intimidation. Let us discuss terms with wisdom and respect as equals." The diplomats exchanged glances. Some had expected a timid princess or a court divided by fear. Instead, they faced a leader who spoke with confidence, and beside her stood a human who had earned her trust and the city's respect. Kale stepped forward, adding, "We welcome dialogue. But understand this. Erythia will defend its people and its city. We act with courage and intelligence, not with fear. The diplomats paused, impressed despite themselves. They had underestimated Erythia and its defenders, especially the human at the princess's side. Negotiations began, hours ago. The sun rose over Erythia, casting long shadows across the palace towers and golden courtyards. The city was alive with preparation. Soldiers polished their armor, merchants stocked supplies, and engineers checked the walls and gates for weaknesses. The news of raiders approaching had spread quickly, and the kingdom braced itself for the first strike. Kyle moved through the palace corridors, now treated with cautious respect by the guards. He had earned this not by birthright, not by noble title, but by the strength of his mind and courage. The palace was unfamiliar to him, yet each step he took felt less like being a prisoner and more like being a strategist. He studied maps, suggested patrols, and devised training drills. Princess Soraya followed closely, her green eyes bright with curiosity and pride. She listened intently as Kale spoke of tactics and human strategies. "You see," Kale explained, pointing to a map of the surrounding star clusters. "Raiders do not attack randomly. They test defenses first. They look for patterns. If we can anticipate them, we can turn their strength into weakness." Soraya nodded, absorbing every word. "And the humans you speak of, do they always fight this way?" Kale smiled faintly. "We fight to survive, Princess. Strategy and adaptation matter more than brute force. Sometimes brains are stronger than brawn." The soldiers, initially skeptical of taking advice from a human, began to watch closely. When Kale organized a simulation of an ambush, using both archers and scouts, it surprised them how quickly he adapted their traditional methods into something more effective. Even the most senior officers began to acknowledge his skill in whispers. As the day passed, Soraya could see Kyle's value not just in battle, but in inspiration. The soldiers gained confidence from him. The palace staff found themselves listening to his observations, learning new ways to do their duties more efficiently. And through it all, Kale remained humble. He did not boast. He did not demand attention. He only offered guidance where it mattered. By evening, the princess and the human found a quiet terrace overlooking the city. The twin moons had risen, casting silver light across the towers and gardens. Soraya leaned on the railing, watching the lights twinkle below. "You are different from anyone I have met," she said softly. "You do not fear me, yet you do not disrespect me. You do not try to please anyone, yet people respect you." Kyle glanced at her, his dark eyes thoughtful. "I have learned to survive in a world that often underestimates me. But I have also learned to recognize strength when I see it. You are strong, Princess, in ways that no one here seems to understand." Soraya felt a warmth in her chest. For the first time, she felt someone truly saw her, beyond titles and expectations. "I do not wish to be seen as only a princess," she admitted. "I want to be more. I want to make choices, even if they are difficult, even if others disapprove." Kyle nodded. "Then we understand each other." "That is rare, very rare." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden commotion in the courtyard. A young soldier ran toward them, out of breath and panicked. "Princess, Kale, scouts report raiders approaching faster than expected. Their ships have crossed the outer clusters. They will reach us before dawn." Soraya's heart quickened, but she did not show fear. She grabbed Kale's arm, steadying herself. "Then we must act now. Can you help me organize the defenses?" Kale nodded. "Of course. But we must think quickly. The enemy will expect standard formations. We must surprise them." Together they moved through the palace, giving orders and arranging soldiers. Soraya commanded with authority, while Kale offered strategies that the Erythian forces had never considered. He suggested traps in the narrow passages, ambush points along the walls, and patrol rotations to confuse the raiders. The queen watched from her chambers, observing her daughter and the human. Even she could not deny Kale's intelligence and Soraya's courage. But worry lingered in her mind. A human had never held such influence over Erythia before. Could her daughter's choice bring glory or disaster? As night fell, the first raider ships appeared on the horizon. Dark silhouettes against the twin moons, they moved swiftly, their engines humming like predatory beasts. Soldiers raised alarms, weapons glittering in the moonlight. The city gates were locked, and archers took positions along the walls. Kyle and Soraya stood side by side on the main tower. He pointed to likely landing spots, whispering instructions to those nearby. She relayed his orders to the troops, her voice clear and commanding. When the raiders landed, they were met not with fear but with prepared resistance. Ambushes struck from hidden positions. Arrows rained down from the walls and traps halted their advance. The soldiers moved with confidence, following Kale's plans and Saraya's commands. The raiders had expected an easy conquest. Instead, they were met with unexpected intelligence and coordination. Confusion spread through their ranks as human strategy met Erythian strength. The city was alive with energy and determination. During the battle, Kale fought alongside the soldiers, moving swiftly, guiding them with precision. Saraya joined him, her sword flashing in the moonlight. Together they became a symbol of unity, human and Erythian, working as equals. By dawn, the raiders had retreated. The city had won, though not without cost. Soldiers tended to the wounded, and Kale checked the defenses to ensure no further threat remained. Saraya stood beside him, exhausted but exhilarated. "You saved this city," she said quietly, "not just with skill but with spirit. Everyone saw it. Even the nobles." Kale shook his head. "I only did what needed to be done." The soldiers fought bravely. "You gave them strength, Princess. Never forget that. Leadership is not just strategy, it is belief." Saraya looked at him, admiration and something deeper growing in her heart. She realized that this human, this unlikely companion, had changed her life. He was not her prize in the way the court had imagined. He was someone who made her see beyond rules, beyond expectation, beyond fear. Even the queen could not deny it. From her high chamber, she saw the city safe and her daughter standing proudly beside Kale. Perhaps the human was not a threat, but a gift. Perhaps this choice, shocking and unusual as it was, could shape the kingdom in ways no one had ever imagined. As the first light of dawn bathed Erythia, Saraya and Kale stood together on the tower, overlooking the city they had defended. There was an unspoken understanding between them now, a bond of trust, respect, and shared purpose. The days ahead would not be easy. Challenges loomed, both within the palace and beyond its walls. But for the first time, both human and princess felt a quiet certainty. They could face whatever came together, and in that certainty, the first true spark of something more than duty, more than loyalty, began to awaken. Something neither of them could yet name, but something that would grow stronger with every trial they faced. The city of Erythia had celebrated victory in whispers, but the air of triumph was short-lived. Scouts brought urgent news. The raiders had regrouped, gathering strength in the outer clusters. Their return would be swift and much larger than before. The palace, though defended once, could not rely on luck a second time. Kale stood in the strategy room, studying maps with Saraya by his side. His hands traced the paths of the approaching enemy ships. "They will not make the same mistake twice," he said, his dark eyes sharp. "They will expect our defenses, our walls, our traps. We must be unpredictable." Saraya nodded, leaning over the maps. "Then we will not only defend the city. We will strike first, but how? Their fleet is larger than the last." Kyle's mind worked quickly. "We split our forces. Some will defend the walls, but a strike team can intercept their landing ships. We can use the terrain to our advantage, valleys, narrow passes, and the cliffs surrounding the city." Saraya's green eyes sparkled with determination. "Then we begin at once. You will lead the strike team with me." The queen observed from her chambers, silent but tense. It was unprecedented for a human to lead troops in Erythia, and more astonishing that the princess chose to fight alongside him. Yet she could not deny the logic of Kale's plans nor the confidence Saraya showed. As the sun set, Kyle assembled the strike team. Soldiers eyed him warily. A human leading Erythians was unheard of. Yet there was something in his posture, calm, precise, commanding, that demanded attention. Saraya walked among them, her presence inspiring courage. "Tonight," Kale said, his voice steady, "we do not fight as slaves or nobles. We fight as defenders of our city. We strike together and we strike wisely." The soldiers nodded, their doubts quieted by his clarity. Saraya placed her hand on Kyle's shoulder. "I stand with you," she said simply. The words were not of command nor of expectation. They were a pledge, a bond that surprised even herself. They moved through the night, climbing cliffs and slipping through hidden valleys. Kale directed their positions, whispering instructions that made the team almost invisible. The raiders' landing ships glinted under the moonlight, unaware of the trap awaiting them. As the first raider soldiers stepped onto the ground, Arrows and energy pulses struck from unexpected angles. Confusion spread among their ranks. Kale moved among the defenders, pointing, shouting, guiding. His human tactics, unfamiliar to the aliens, worked perfectly. Soraya fought at his side, her sword flashing in silver light. She cut through raider lines not recklessly but with precision, following Kale's strategy. Together they moved as one, human and princess, a comb. The great banners of Erythia swayed high above the royal arena. Shimmering silks of gold and crimson stretched across towering spires, catching the light of the twin suns. The air itself seemed alive with energy. Thousands of voices filled the Colosseum, a sea of alien faces all eager for the grand contest to reach its climax. It was a tradition older than memory. Every 10 years, warriors from across the stars came to Erythia to prove their strength. The prize was not gold, nor land, nor treasure, but something far greater. The right to stand before the queen's daughter, Princess Soraya. By custom, the princess would choose her reward from the line of victors, a champion, a servant, or even a noble gift. The choice was hers alone. The Queen of Erythia, majestic in her silver crown, watched from her throne at the top of the arena. Her golden eyes carried the wisdom of ages. She expected her daughter to honor tradition. Perhaps Soraya would choose a warrior of noble blood, someone to strengthen alliances. Perhaps she would pick a rare gift from a faraway empire. Whatever the case, the choice would show her readiness to rule one day. Soraya, seated beside her mother, seemed calm, but her mind was restless. Her long emerald robes shimmered as she leaned forward, watching the field. She was unlike the other princesses of history. Where they saw only power and tradition, she hungered for something different, something true. Down below, the champions stood lined in the dust of the arena. Towering reptilian gladiators, insectoid hunters with sharp mandibles, armored soldiers from distant empires, each one waited, proud and fierce. And then there was the human. He stood apart, his wrists bound in chains. His name was Kale. He was no noble champion brought to fight for honor. He was a prisoner captured in a border skirmish months ago. Many in the crowd whispered that his presence here was an insult. To them, humans were nothing more than curious outsiders, a lesser species from the edge of the galaxy. What use was a human among the mighty races of Erythia? Yet Soraya's eyes lingered on him. He did not bow his head like a slave. Even in chains, he stood straight, his sharp gaze sweeping across the arena. He was lean compared to the armored beasts beside him, yet there was a quiet strength in the way he carried himself. The queen raised her hand, and silence fell across the Colosseum. Her voice echoed with command. "Daughter, the champions stand before you. The blood of victory has been spilled. Now you must choose your prize as tradition demands." The crowd roared in anticipation. All eyes turned to Soraya. She rose slowly, her emerald robe trailing behind her. Her heart beat faster, though her face revealed no weakness. One by one, she walked past the champions. A towering reptilian bowed deeply, expecting her favor. A glittering noble from a distant world lowered a jeweled spear in salute. Each warrior waited, certain of their worth. But Soraya did not stop. Her steps carried her past them all, to the very end of the line where the human stood. Kyle lifted his head, meeting her gaze without fear. For a long moment they said nothing. The crowd grew restless, murmurs spreading like wildfire. Surely the princess would not lower herself to such a choice. Soraya's voice rang clear. "I choose him." The arena froze. The queen's eyes widened, though she masked her shock quickly. "You would claim a slave?" "A human, no less?" The nobles gasped in outrage. Warriors bristled in disbelief. But Soraya's chin lifted, her voice steady. "Yes, I claim him. He is my prize." Kale's jaw tightened, his expression unreadable. He had expected nothing from this ceremony, nothing but humiliation. Yet now the Princess of Erythia had spoken his name without words, pulling him from the shadows into the center of all eyes. The queen leaned back in her throne, golden eyes fixed on her daughter. A heavy silence stretched, filled only by the distant cry of banners in the wind. Finally she spoke, her voice measured. "Very well. The princess has chosen." The Colosseum erupted into chaos. Cheers, jeers, arguments, disbelief. Some shouted that the tradition had been broken. Others whispered that the princess had shamed the crown. Yet Soraya stood firm, her gaze never leaving Kale. The guards moved to unbind him, though their hands hesitated. Kale did not move until Soraya herself stepped forward and gave a single nod. Only then did he walk free of his chains, though the weight of judgment from thousands pressed heavy upon him. As they left the arena, whispers followed them like shadows. The nobles spoke of scandal. The warriors muttered of insult. But Soraya's heart was strangely light for the first time in many years. The queen, watching from her throne, remained silent. Outwardly, her face was calm, but inside her thoughts raced. Her daughter's choice was reckless, dangerous even. Yet there had been fire in Soraya's eyes, a fire she had not seen before. That night, in the halls of the palace, Kale was brought before Soraya once more. This time without the chains. The chamber was quiet, lit only by soft crystal lamps. "You could have chosen any champion," Kale said at last, his voice low, steady. "Why me?" Soraya studied him carefully. For all the grandeur of her life, no one had ever dared speak to her like that. Not as a princess, not as a prize, but as a person. "Because," she answered, "you were the only one who did not kneel." Kyle did not know whether to feel insulted or honored, yet deep inside a flicker of something unfamiliar stirred. Perhaps this was no ordinary game of crowns and courts. Perhaps fate itself had moved its hand, and in the quiet chamber beneath the ancient towers of Erythia, the first sparks of an unlikely story began to glow. The palace halls were quieter than the arena, yet their grandeur was overwhelming. Towering pillars carved from pale stone stretched toward the ceiling, and glowing crystal lamps cast soft dancing light across tapestries of battles long past. Servants hurried silently, and the scent of exotic spices filled the air. Kyle walked beside Princess Soraya, still under the eyes of the palace guards. Though the chains were gone, he was acutely aware of his position. He was no guest, no noble. He was still, in the eyes of the court, her prize, a human slave. Yet something about Soraya's gaze made the weight of that title strange. It was not cruel nor commanding. It was curious, even cautious. "You do not speak like the other humans I have heard of," Soraya said, her voice soft but steady. Her green eyes examined him carefully. "You have courage and defiance. Most of your kind would have bowed before now." Kale's lips pressed into a thin line. "I do not bow to those who see me as less than I am. Even if I am a prize, I am still myself." Soraya smiled faintly, intrigued. She had never met someone so blunt and yet unafraid. In Erythia, words were often carefully chosen, layered in meaning. But Kale spoke simply, honestly. His voice carried no false pride, no hidden fear. "Perhaps you are the first human I have ever met who understands something I have known all along," she said. "That strength is not measured by size or title, but by spirit." The human's eyes flickered at the praise, unsure whether to accept it or reject it. He had learned to trust no one easily. Not princes, not nobles, not even his own captors. Yet Soraya's attention felt different. Over the next days, Kyle was introduced to the palace. Servants and guards treated him with polite distance, uncertain how to act around a human chosen by the princess. Many whispered that this choice would ruin Soraya's reputation. "Why a human?" they asked in hushed tones.
"He is weak."
"He is not of noble blood. This will dishonor the crown." Soraya ignored the murmurs. She walked beside Kale through the courtyards, discussing the training halls, the libraries, and the strategic rooms where maps of the stars were laid out. Her questions were not idle curiosity. She asked about battles, survival, and how humans adapted to challenges. Kale answered without hesitation, explaining methods unfamiliar to her, strategies she had never considered. For the first time, Soraya felt excitement she could not name. Her palace was a place of rules and expectations, yet here was someone who challenged her thoughts, who made her consider new possibilities. One evening, in the glow of the twin suns setting beyond the palace walls, Kyle and Soraya stood on the balcony. Below, the city of Erythia shimmered, alive with the sounds of night creatures and distant music. "Do you fear me?" Soraya asked quietly. "I am a princess. I have authority, power, and tradition behind me. And yet you do not kneel or fear me." Kale shook his head. "I fear nothing but being forgotten. I fear only losing myself. I will not bow to anyone who does not deserve it." Soraya studied him in silence. She realized then that her fascination with this human went beyond curiosity. He had a fire she had never seen in anyone in her court, not even the most honored warriors. He was a puzzle, a challenge, a spark in the endless halls of tradition. Days passed and Soraya began to test him. She brought him to the training grounds not as a warrior, but to see how he would react to Erythian methods. The alien guards trained with precision, using techniques Kale had never encountered. Yet he adapted quickly, his mind calculating, his movements precise. Some of the guards scoffed at the human at first, underestimating him. But within hours, even the strongest began to notice his skill. He moved differently from their fighters, more unpredictable yet effective. Whispers spread, "The human, he learns too fast." Soraya observed all of it, pride flickering in her chest. "He may not be one of us," she said softly to herself, "but he is remarkable." Yet not all was peaceful. The nobles grew uneasy. They sent subtle warnings to the queen. Princess Saray,